Hi, I'm Candice Malcolm, and welcome to the Candice Malcolm Show. Happy Friday, everybody. Hope you have a great weekend lined up here. It's Friday. We've got a lot of news to catch up on today, but because it's Friday, we're also going to have a bit of fun. So yesterday, I sat down with financial journalist and author Diane Francis about her 2013 book, Merger of the Century, Why Canada and the United States Should Become One Country. It was a super interesting, rather provocative interview, and I hope you will go and check that out. One of the things that Diane Francis mentioned, and she's an esteemed journalist, very well respected across the country, across the aisle, and she made the point repeatedly that Justin Trudeau is a disgrace. He has become a punchline, a joke for the rest of the country and the rest of the world. She called him a woke joke, and I think that is entirely correct. Canadians care a lot about our international reputation. We care a lot about what people are saying about us and what people think about us. And the fact that Justin Trudeau is out there embarrassing us day in and day out is just a national disgrace. It really, truly is. The world is laughing at how woke and how pathetic he is, but they're also laughing at Canada. They're also laughing at our country and how dysfunctional it is. And I think that one of the major news stories highlighting this dysfunction and putting it out for everyone to see is this meeting that happened over this week on Wednesday, meeting of the premiers and Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, discussing what they were going to do with Trump, with the 25% tariffs coming through, and notably Danielle Smith refusing to sign on to this agreement, refusing to go along with what the Team Canada approach that Justin Trudeau is trying to usher in. So on Wednesday, Danielle Smith put out a statement rejecting Justin Trudeau's ideas. She had a long post on X. I'll just read part of it to you, just explaining why she was not joining in on this joint statement. She wrote, "I had a constructive discussion with my fellow premiers on how best to deal with the threat of tariffs from incoming U.S. administration. We agreed on several strategies and I look forward to working with them. However, federal government officials continue to publicly and privately float the idea of cutting off our energy supply to the U.S. and imposing export tariffs on Alberta energy and other products in the United States. Until these threats cease, Alberta will not be able to fully support the federal government's plan in dealing with the threatened tariffs. Alberta will simply not agree to export tariffs on our energy or other products, nor do we support a ban on exports of these same products. We will take whatever actions are needed to protect the livelihoods of Albertans from such destructive federal policies." And so we reported on this at True North, just saying that Danielle Smith is refusing to support these potential tariffs. We're already getting tariffs one way from Trump, potentially as soon as early next week when Trump is sworn in and inaugurated. Why would we put additional tariffs and further harm our own economy? That is sort of the point coming out of Alberta. We're already suffering through a cost of living crisis in this country. And if the Americans are going to try to teach us a lesson and saying, you know, we want you to change your supply management regime, we want you to focus on your border, we want you to carry your own weight when it comes to military spending, the reaction should not be a trade war. I want to read this excellent analysis by Dan Knight, because this is really turning into a Alberta versus Canada debate where many Canadians and even many conservatives from other parts of the country are saying that Alberta is wrong and that we should all be on one united page. Dan Knight just made an absolute excellent point here. And I do want to read a little bit from his post here. Dan Knight's a journalist and he is a commentator. He has a Substack and really, really excellent stuff. So he's talking about what Trudeau is proposing to do, which is essentially a $150 billion countermeasure plan to and include the possibility of crippling Alberta's energy sector. And so he says, why wasn't Alberta there? Because Premier Danielle Smith isn't an idiot. Trudeau's plan includes export levies on Canadian oil, a move that would essentially tell Alberta to torch its own economy to help Trudeau look tough on Trump. Alberta exports $13.3 billion of energy to the U.S. every month, making it the lifeblood of the country's economy. But sure, let's just gamble that away because Trudeau needs a distraction from his sinking legacy. But Alberta's refusal isn't just about this plan. It's about years of Ottawa treating Alberta like the black sheep of Confederation. Remember the Northern Gateway pipeline? Trudeau killed it. Energy East, dead too. These projects could have given Alberta access to global markets. Instead, Trudeau left the province landlocked, dependent on the US, and completely vulnerable to economic extortion like this. And now, after all that sabotage, he expects Alberta to unite behind this plan. Please. He says, don't get me started on Bill C-69, the Impact Assessment Act, or what we call the No Pipelines Bill. This masterpiece of legislation basically made it impossible to build anything that moves oil. So Dan Knight just really hammering home this point of just how Alberta has been treated under this Liberal government. After almost a decade of bill after bill, measure after measure, trying to intentionally destroy Alberta's economy, Canada's energy, making the oil sands seem like there's something wrong with them, that it's something embarrassing that we need to shut down, just completely devoid of reality, really. I mean, just take a look around the world, take a look at what China's doing, take a look at India, take a look at the number of coal plants that are built every year, the emissions going up, up, up. Here we have Canada, a drop in the bucket with our responsibly developed oil and gas sector, the highest environmental standards in the world, and yet Trudeau treated it like it was an embarrassment, and he did everything he could to kill it. And now here we are in this hour of need when our weaknesses are being exploited and used against us, and Trudeau has the gall to tell Alberta to basically cripple its own economy to save face. It is just absolutely ridiculous. I'm going to read a little bit more from Dan Knight here. He says, and then there's Quebec. Oh, Quebec, the province that spent years wagging its finger at Alberta, calling its oil sands dirty energy, blocking pipeline projects that could have helped the whole country. Meanwhile, Quebec gleefully cashes in billions in equalization payments heavily subsidized by Alberta's wealth. That's right, the same people who call Alberta the bad guys are more than happy to take their money. And now Trudeau wants Alberta to step up and take one for the team. Give me a break. Danielle Smith saw this nonsense for what it was, exploitation. She flatly refused to sign on to any plan that includes export levies on energy restrictions. And you know what? Good for her. She said the federal officials are floating the idea of cutting off energy supply to the U.S., imposing tariffs on Alberta energy. Until these threats cease, Alberta cannot support federal government's plan. Translation, Alberta is done being Ottawa's doormat. Good for her. Great analysis. I'll just finish up by reading here. He says, here's the reality. Alberta isn't at the table because Ottawa hasn't earned the right to ask them to be. You don't treat a province like an ATM for nearly a decade and then expect them to roll over when you need a favor. Danielle Smith stood up and said enough, and frankly, good for her. So here's the real question. How long does Ottawa think it can keep exploiting Alberta before the province decides it's had enough? Because let me tell you, when Alberta's done, it's not just the energy sector that's going to feel it. It is the entire country. That is just so eloquently put. Completely agree. It's like, again, all of a sudden, the same industry that Trudeau has attacked and demonized for 10 years, and now all of a sudden it's Canada's bargaining chit. It's Canada's, it's the pride of Canada. Derek Fildebrandt at the Western Standard had a great tweet kind of just summing this up. He said that Alberta's dirty oil has suddenly become Canadian energy. Exactly. Now that the Prime Minister can use the oil and use it to help benefit himself and his legacy, he's more than happy to claim that it belongs to the entire country and it's the pride of the country. So Pierre Poilievre was asked about all of this. And again, he just pointed out how completely disunited our country is, how ridiculously fractured we are, how under Justin Trudeau, Canada has just become incredibly fractured and not united. Here is Pierre Poilievre pointing that out.
Morning, Andrea McPherson, Global News. Your reaction to Danielle Smith's refusal to sign that joint agreement on the tariff retaliation plan by the premiers, and the impact you think that will have on Canada's battle against the tariffs?
Yes, I mean, like I said, I think the first thing President Trump will do when he takes office is to send a bouquet of flowers to the Liberals of Freeland, Carney, and Trudeau, who have weakened and divided our country and given him the upper hand. The Liberals have forced Canadians to sell 100% of our oil and gas to the Americans at discount prices, which has put us in this position of weakness. It'd be nice if we had pipelines and export terminals that could take our energy to Asia and Europe without going through the United States. But of course, the economic radicals of Trudeau, Freeland, and Carney blocked those projects because of their radical ideology, and they have made us more and more dependent on President Trump. And my approach will be exactly the opposite. I will quickly approve energy projects to send our energy to the rest of the world without relying on Americans, and we will make our country more self-reliant and independent. I will also unite our country. The Liberals are trying to divide one province against another, Canadian against Canadian, right at our moment of maximum vulnerability. This is because we do not have a functional federal government. So we have effectively 10 different foreign affairs ministers, one from each province, trying to fight separately. If we had a carbon tax election now, we could elect a strong, stable, national majority government that would stand up for all Canadians, all industries, in all provinces, and that's what we need to do.
Pierre is obviously right. He's making a lot of sense there. As much as the media would love to talk about how Danielle Smith is being selfish and how it's an Alberta versus the rest of Canada debate, the reality and the thing that we should all be talking about is how we got into this mess, the absolute dystopian nightmare that we find ourselves living through, where we have a government, a totally dysfunctional government that has destroyed our economy in so many ways. And we have this pathetic lame duck leader representing us. Justin Trudeau is the one that is going to be talking to Donald Trump on January 20th when Trump is sworn in. And why is it that Trudeau gets to represent us after the mess he's made and the fact that he's already essentially resigned? Like, he shouldn't even be there. And rather than talking about that, rather than talking about what the Liberals have done to this country, the media get a pass and they get to pretend that this is all Danielle Smith sort of acting out of turn and being selfish, and like, how dare she put Albertans before the rest of Canadians. Well, Danielle Smith supports Pierre Poilievre. She shared his video on X, just basically saying, I agree 100% with Pierre Poilievre. You know, it was also interesting because the media took that response that I just showed you of Pierre Poilievre and said that he was trying to dodge the question, that he didn't answer, that he wasn't clear about whether or not he supports Danielle Smith at all. No, he just cut to the chase. He just cut past the BS and explained the real problem, which is that Trudeau has completely divided the country and it's a total joke. Like, we have 10 different people negotiating on behalf of Canada rather than just the one prime minister. And if we had a prime minister who had a political mandate, that would be the case, instead of the total mess that we have. Here is Justin Trudeau, who was asked about this yesterday, and he just continues to divide the country. It is pathetic. Let's watch that clip.
I think it's very clear that right now, Pierre Poilievre, who wants to be prime minister for all Canadians, has a choice to make. Either he stands up to fight for all Canadians alongside all premiers and the federal government that are doing that, or he chooses to stand with Danielle Smith, Kevin O'Leary, and ultimately Donald Trump.
He's just so unbelievable. He just loves to divide. It's always about dividing. Justin Trudeau, how dare you just say that you're standing up for all Canadians? You haven't stood up for all Canadians for a very, very long time. And for you to sit here and accuse Pierre Poilievre of not standing up for all Canadians is just pathetic. It is pathetic. But don't worry, Justin Trudeau still has a lot of fans propping up his position and his point of view. I'm talking specifically about the CBC, who are still unwavering in their love and support for Justin Trudeau. I want to play this clip from At Issue journalist Althea Raj, making a point that just really makes you scratch your head. Here's Althea Raj.
For a lot of conservatives, especially Western conservatives, who were really upset by a Bloc Québécois bill just a few months ago that aimed to carve out supply management from any future trade deals, it's rather convenient that when it starts to be about oil, they've completely changed their tune because the rationale is the same. You should not purposefully say out loud to the person negotiating on the other side of you, I'm unwilling to touch this. That's not how you have a strong negotiating hand. That's the point of the Prime Minister.
So according to Althea Raj, let's just get this straight. Quebec's supply management, right? A government program that issues quotas and rations and distributes dairy. So a government socialist scheme in Quebec that they want to protect is the same thing as Alberta's free market energy system. Like, you can't even make that up. Like, how is that even the same thing? One is a government contrived program. And when you have free trade, you're not supposed to have these protectionist programs in place. So obviously the Americans would want the Canadians to actually have free trade in order to have a free trade agreement. On the other hand, you have Alberta's energy, which is, like I read earlier from Dan Knight's post, the lifeline of the blood of the Canadian economy. Like, everything in our economy, so much of our economy is connected to natural resources like energy and oil and gas. Just a very confused point, but like we know that CBC journalists will say anything to make Justin Trudeau look good and to slam the other side, namely mostly conservatives. A side note, because yes, the CBC still loves their man. They'll still stand by their man, Justin Trudeau. Not all the press feel that way. Interesting, a user on X that I follow, Contrarian Tribe, he pointed this out, posted some questions from the Trudeau press conference there, the one that I just showed you a clip from. And he says that the questions, well, they actually weren't showing very much love. The journalists in attendance weren't showing a lot of love for Justin Trudeau. I think they soured on him a little bit. So I'm going to play you a bit of that clip.
If you're not seeking re-election, you're not running in the Liberal leadership, respectfully, why are you here in Windsor? This essentially feels like a campaign whistle-stop visit of our wonderful city. Why spend all this money on security and travel if you're not campaigning?
The job of a prime minister is not first and foremost to campaign.
As you reflect on your legacy, how do you feel knowing that the consumer carbon tax is all but dead?
I am not spending any time right now reflecting on my legacy. I'm very much focused on continuing to do the work as prime minister.
Why do you believe you're effective right now in helping lead Canada's response to the tariff threats when the other side, the Trump administration, knows you're on your way out the door and might not ultimately be the person they're going to be dealing with and trying to sort this out?
Canadians had an election in 2021 that sent me into the Prime Minister's office once again.
Has there been any indication from the Trump administration that the border measures you introduced could be enough to stop the tariffs?
I can say that the border plan that we put forward and the measures we put forward have been very well received by different members of the incoming American administration.
Why are you here, Prime Minister? Why are you talking to us? Why are you going to Washington? Nobody wants you anymore. Nobody wants you there. And even the press, even the government-funded press, the official legacy media, bought and paid for by the Trudeau government, they're even willing to say it. Kind of amusing to watch Justin Trudeau his way through pretty basic questions there. Okay, speaking of the free press and the bribe press, Mark Carney announced his leadership yesterday up in Edmonton. And guess what? He let it be known where he really believes and where he stands on a free press and free speech. So pretty blatant here at his campaign announcement. He just refused to let any independent journalists into the building, even those accredited by the Alberta legislature, even local journalists like our own Isaac Lamoureux, who lives in Edmonton, who registered to go to this event. As soon as he tried to walk in the door, the thugs working on the Carney campaign, in addition to the paid police officers who were there, had them escorted out. So here is how we were reporting it yesterday. Basically, that police told Lamoureux that he was not allowed to enter the premises after contacting the organizers who refused True North entry. Shortly thereafter, Lamoureux was asked to leave by the organizers after organizers told police that he was not welcome. There's some footage here by Kian Bexty of the Counter Signal. Kian was a guest on our show earlier this week. Go check out that episode if you haven't already. But here is Kian's videos showing some thugs just basically not letting him in, and the police rather politely. You can see how polite Kian is being with the police who are enforcing these rules that they cannot perform journalism on the great Mark Carney. Let's play that clip.
You guys with us? Of course. You've been advised you have to leave?
By nobody who's identifying themselves. They're just a random dude came up and said that the this fellow as well. We're just, if we have to leave, I'm happy to leave, but nobody from whoever's booked this has told us that they're actually an authority figure, just people that I think don't like us, so.
Okay, well, you are trespassing, so you need to leave the property.
Okay.
Is incredibly frustrating for us at True North. Look, one of the number one rules of journalism is that you don't want to make yourself the story. And I actually really agree with that. And I don't like it when our journalists become the story. I don't like it when I myself, or when Andrew Lawton, or when one of our younger reporters like Isaac becomes the story. I would so much rather just actually get to go and perform journalism. Like, I would much prefer Isaac just be let into the room to report, ask your questions, just treat him like a journalist because he is one, rather than this whole thing that seems to happen every time there's a Liberal event, where they pretend that anyone who comes from an independent organization, anyone who's not funded by the government through the government bailouts, anyone who's not part of CBC, somehow they don't deserve a spot to be in there. It really does go against the very foundational principles of a free society. I'm not just being hyperbolic here. It's incredibly important for journalists to be able to question a political leader, especially in a situation like this, where Mark Carney, the WEF elite, the global elite who brags about, going to Davos and being part of the WEF and being part of the in crowd, that he wouldn't even take questions from reporters, that he doesn't recognize you as journalists unless you come from the CBC or one of the other selected media companies. This is a guy that's going to become prime minister in all likelihood without getting voted in by the people. The man doesn't even hold a seat in the House of Commons. You would think that he would try to at least be open to hearing from Canadians, but instead he's showing us who he truly is on day one. And it is just really unfortunate. We've been through this before. For those of you who've been following True North for a long time, you'll remember back in 2019, I sued the Trudeau government. I sued the Leadership Debate Commission because they wouldn't let Andrew Lawton report. We actually won that lawsuit. We got a court order that demanded that they let Andrew Lawton into the building. I was so proud of that. And I was proud to see Andrew in there asking questions of his prime minister, of Justin Trudeau, as the press are supposed to do. It's sad that here we are 6 years later and we're still fighting these same battles. But this is the mindset of the Liberals, of the global elite. They don't care. They don't care. They're going to fund the journalists that they approve of, and the other ones are just going to be pushed right out. So we'll get to a little bit about what happened at the actual debate. Carney delivers a speech. I don't know. I don't see it. This guy is not impressive to me. He's just a very boring, dry, low-energy candidate. He's a banker. I don't know how he's going to appeal to Canadians, or how he thinks he's going to appeal to Canadians. Here's a little bit about what his speech looked like yesterday.
Old times, my friends, are over. Our times are anything but ordinary. The system, it's not working as it should. And it's not working as it could. People are anxious. No wonder. Too many are falling behind. Too many young people can't afford a home. Too many people can't find a doctor. And then we're living through the two biggest technological revolutions since they split the atom. And our climate is changing in ways that threatens livelihoods from Fort Mac to Fort Smith. And then on top of that, as George just mentioned, in just 4 days, the United States will swear in Donald Trump as their 47th president, a man who threatens economic force on his closest, most steadfast allies, including Canada. No.
I'm really getting some strong Jeb Bush vibes from this guy. Like, kind of reminds me of low energy Jeb, where he has to beg the audience, like, please clap, please clap. That was the applause line. Please clap. Really, and the picture that he's painting there, this doom and gloom picture, it's like, yes, Canada is in a terrible situation because of your policies, because of the policies that you were advising to Justin Trudeau to spend, print money to get their way out of the COVID disaster that they themselves created by shutting down the economy. It is all your fault. It's all the fault of Liberals. They call themselves Liberals, but they're actually socialists, green socialists. And now they're pretending that all of this whole situation was just handed to to us. It was totally outside of our control. And now we're going to have some hard times because of it. Not compelling at all. And I will point out something kind of amusing that was going around on social media. I don't know if you noticed it there, but Mark Carney's logo on his on the stand that he was talking to, here he goes, I'm in, and he's got this flashy little logo, an M with a Canadian flag underneath. But whoever designed his logo, it turns out that they actually just copied it from an Alberta bank, MedCredit. Look at that. It is the exact same. I wonder if AI created it. Like, they just plugged in Mark Carney and said, hey, create a logo. And they even have the same initials, MC there. I think that's so funny. So whoops, Mark Carney accidentally stole a logo from a local bank, and the bank pointed out on social media. It was pretty funny there, saying it's a beautiful logo. We're apolitical. So stop trying to. You're gonna destroy our brand, man. Like, we're in Alberta. We don't want anyone to think that we're liberals. We have nothing to do with you, and we don't want to. So, whoops, a little bit of a gaffe to start off the campaign there for Mark Carney. Well, Mark Carney decides to take jabs at Pierre Poilievre here, saying that somehow Poilievre is not going to be able to negotiate very well with Donald Trump. The idea of him negotiating is laughable. And then he kind of takes a little shot at Danielle Smith here. Let's play that clip.
Let me tell you one other thing. In these times, sending Pierre Poilievre to negotiate with Donald Trump is the worst possible idea. I can think of one other politician I might not send. It just came to me in the last 24 hours.
Oh, so funny, so edgy, so bold. It's funny because I'm assuming that he's talking about Danielle Smith there, but all I could think was Justin Trudeau. Like, the one person that you really don't want sitting down with Donald Trump is Justin Trudeau, because Trudeau is just so bad and so pathetic, and he's ruined Canada, and everybody knows that. I would much rather have Pierre Poilievre. Much, much, much rather. I don't know why the audience thought that was funny to even think of Poilievre with Trump. The funny thing to me would be imagining Justin Trudeau trying to be Mr. Tough Guy with Donald Trump. Just not going to happen. Interestingly enough, when it came to policy, Mark Carney didn't really make it clear whether or not he was going to continue down the road of the carbon tax. We know that for years and years and years, Mark Carney has been a huge advocate of the carbon tax. This is his campaign announcement. You would think that he would have a very clear answer to this question, but when he's asked about whether he would scrap the carbon tax, he didn't really say. He couldn't really give a clear answer. Here is this clip.
If you were going to take out the carbon tax, you should replace it with something that is at least, if not more, effective. And by effective, it's not just having the same impact in reducing greenhouse gas emissions, but it's making our companies more competitive, it's creating jobs, it's ensuring that Canadian households are made whole in terms of their finances. Because perception may be that it takes out more than the rebate provides, but reality is different. And Canadians will miss that money. So you need a comprehensive approach. You need a comprehensive plan, not just a soundbite that fits on a lectern. And that, again, is the difference between me and some others. I don't do a little leak. I don't do a soundbite. I do a comprehensive plan that addresses all the aspects, and you'll see that in the coming weeks.
So I don't know if anyone told Mark Carney, but he is running for prime minister. The point of that is to be able to communicate to people. And so, yes, sometimes you need sound bites. Sometimes you need to be able to explain your policy in a few words so that people can understand it and people can hear it. No, that's beneath Mark Carney. So he's just going to give some sophisticated discussion, totally nonsensical as well. The idea that somehow a tax on our industry makes us more competitive and makes us create more jobs. That doesn't actually happen because other countries don't care about this kind of thing. China and India and Russia and Iran, Venezuela, none of them have carbon taxes. They don't care. So when we implement this kind of thing, we're just harming ourselves. But Mark Carney is too sophisticated for all of that. And whoops. Let me just turn off my phone ringer here. Sorry, guys. Someone's calling me. And I need to be able to turn it off. And where is it? Sorry about that. Someone's calling me and I missed the call. Okay, so so basically, where was I here? Carney won't say whether or not he supports the carbon tax, but we know that he has for a very long time. So Pierre Poilievre jumped in on this and sort of amusingly started trolling Mark Carney, saying, hey, let's have some fun. Every 20 minutes, I will post some quotes from Mark Carney supporting the carbon tax, including demands that the tax go even higher. That's why we call him Carbon Tax Carney. Hold on to your wallets. And while Mark Carney was making this announcement, Pierre made good on this promise and just put post after post after post, quoting Mark Carney in the past. He has been the biggest champion of carbon tax. His only criticism of Justin Trudeau's carbon tax is that he wishes that it was higher. He wishes that there were more taxes and that it has to be much, much higher to change people's behavior. And so really just keep it going. So, he might try to run on a campaign of getting rid of the carbon tax or changing the carbon tax. That's sort of what he was alluding to in that speech. But the reality is that he believes in it. He's supported it. It has been that's enough, Sean. You don't need to show them anymore. That's enough. That he'll never explain to Canadians why it is that he's changed his position, why it is that he supported carbon taxes for all those years, and now he's against them. I think that's the onus is on Carney to explain that change of heart. Of course, it didn't take the Conservatives long to release an attack ad. And so moments after Carney made his announcement, the Conservatives were ready with this ad.
Mark Carney is back from Europe.
And speaking as a European,
to continue what Justin Trudeau started.
A steady increase in the price of carbon. Carbon prices have been applied sparingly. They've been set far too low.
He even called Trudeau's carbon tax a model for others. So no matter what he calls it,
effectively a shadow carbon price, or price on pollution,
you're going to keep paying.
In some form of carbon tax.
Carbon Tax Carney. He's just like Justin.
You're sneaky.
So, yeah, he's going to have to explain. All right, let's move on. Chrystia Freeland is also in the race, and she was supposed to announce on Friday that she was in. Well, she posted this on X saying that she is in, but her formal announcement, I guess, is going to come this weekend. So it says official launch Sunday, and it says Chrystia Freeland today issued the following statement regarding the Liberal Party leadership race. I'm running to fight for Canada. So she's in, even though she's not actually doing an announcement. I wonder why. I wonder if they had to totally change their strategy, given that Mark Carney came out ahead of her and announced. So they're throwing something together for Sunday. I think that she will also be running far, far away from her own record and her position in Justin Trudeau's government. She was a deputy prime minister. She was a finance minister. She was Trudeau's right-hand man throughout the entire ordeal. And the fact that she will probably be running as a change agent, as someone different. I imagine that she'll also abandon the carbon tax. It was sort of hinted to in the National Post article here. It says that Freeland plans to replace the carbon tax with something else. So even the person who shepherded it in, who advocated for it side by side with Justin Trudeau, now recognizes that it has been a total disaster for the economy and the country and is backing away. Interestingly, she also is setting this up kind of as a fight of Canada versus Alberta versus the United States here. So it seems like they would rather run against Donald Trump or Danielle Smith than Pierre Poilievre, probably because Poilievre is such an effective politician. But here is what she posted on X. She wrote, I'm a proud daughter of Peace River, Alberta. That makes me a proud Canadian. I stand together with all of Canada in the face of Donald Trump's threats. Pierre Poilievre, are you going to stand up for Canada or are you going to stand with Danielle Smith? So playing up her Alberta roots there, even though, as I mentioned, she represents the urban riding of Rosedale University in downtown Toronto. So about as far away as you can get from northern Alberta, where she grew up. So we will continue to cover the Liberal leadership race on the show. We'll be back on Monday with much more of that. All right, let's change focus a little bit. We used to do a segment called Fake News Friday on the show, and I think it's fun. to highlight some of the sort of worst things that happen in the Canadian media. This story gave me a little chuckle. CTV basically tells Canadians to lower their standards of living. So they post this article on X. It says 7 ways to help you, what does it say? 7 ideas to help you break free from living to paycheck, from paycheck to paycheck. And you can see the reach of this post. Put that back up, Sean. At the bottom there, you can see how many views this had. This thing was viewed over 6 million times, 6.4 million views. Holy smokes, that is big for a Canadian publication like CTV. Well, it wasn't good news for CTV. The reason that this post got shared so widely and so much is one of the ideas to help you break free from living from paycheck to paycheck was, here it is, number 7. Just reduce your standard of living. Just reduce your expectations, lower your expectations, Canadians. One of the biggest mistakes you can make is having too high of a standard of living. So for all of you Canadians, I know you think you live in the first world. I know you think you live in a rich Western liberal democracy. But the reality is, under Justin Trudeau, it's become a third world. It's become the third world. It's become Venezuela. And so all you have to do is just reduce your standard of living. Well, news for CTV. We're all doing that, not voluntarily, though. So many Canadians, even Olivia Chow, the mayor of Toronto, suggested that one way to deal with the crisis of standard of living is just to skip one meal, just to skip a meal a day or skip a meal a week. And that will help you make ends meet in Canada. So the blowback was so bad that CTV had to take the article down. It is now no longer on their website. Canadians did not appreciate being told to lower your standard of living. And again, this goes back to the theme of the show, I think, which is that it's no wonder that the world is laughing at us. Canada has become a joke under Justin Trudeau, under his insane woke policies, and the world noticed, the world reacted. It's a little bit refreshing to hear some Americans notice what's happening in Canada. Like, it's so obvious to them from the outside looking in at what a disaster Justin Trudeau has been. So it's a little bit vindicating for Canadians who have opposed Justin Trudeau from day one, like myself, to hear Americans finally kind of open up and speak the truth when it comes to Justin Trudeau. So we're going to go through a few examples here, starting with none other than Joe Rogan. So here is what Joe had to say after he heard the news that Justin Trudeau is stepping down.
Oh, you're thinking of Justin Trudeau doing blackface.
Dude, he just retired.
He's just retired, yeah.
That's crazy.
Well, he's stepping down till they're going to have to find a replacement, and then he leaves.
I liked him better when he was black.
But that was very brief.
Ouch. That stings. We also had American journalist and podcaster Megyn Kelly, I think really speaking for all women when she describes how she feels as a woman looking at Justin Trudeau and hearing from him. Let's play that clip.
Justin Trudeau has turned himself into a punchline. He is, when I picture effete, feckless man, I picture Justin Trudeau. I couldn't think of somebody less attractive to me as a woman than that man. I can't stand the sight of him. I'm thrilled our friendly neighbors in our evil top hat, as Michael Knowles calls Canada, have come to their senses and effectively forced him to this decision.
I think Megyn Kelly speaks for all women. I would say all women. It is funny to the point where if I play a clip of Justin Trudeau on my show, the comment section will be like, I had to turn off your video, Candice, because I cannot stand the look of him. I cannot stand the sound of his voice. There's nothing about him that I like. And I think Megyn Kelly kind of summed it up there. It's funny, she calls Canada America's evil top hat. I remember when I first heard that, I was kind of offended. I was like, hey, what did we do, right? And then you hear Michael Knowles, who's an American Christian commentator, who kind of explains his perspective on why Canada is America's evil top hat. And you're kind of like, okay, I agree with that. Like, all of the worst woke policies that are destroying America are also being tested and tried up in Canada with a lot less pushback. So you can't fight with him on that one. It's completely true. Speaking of the Daily Wire, we also heard from Matt Walsh over there. Here is what he had to say on the situation.
As a result, after a decade of self-loathing, Canada is now predictably falling apart. Justin Trudeau has resigned. Parliament has been suspended. Their whole government has basically collapsed. Canada is sputtering along, barely staying alive in the cold, like a stray cat that everyone ignores. But there's some good news now for Canadians. Finally, at long last, against all odds, they may soon have a nation to call their own.
So there you go. We also heard from Ben Shapiro. Ben does a decent job explaining what is happening in Canada and the need for Pierre Poilievre to step in. Let's play that clip.
Again, Justin Trudeau has been an awful prime minister, and the fact that he has lasted as long as he has is simply because of the system itself. And by the way, the original fall off for Trudeau certainly had something to do with the convoy protest, right? The Freedom Convoy that started in early 2022, that started to have an impact on him. And now, of course, he is facing down a Trump administration that is not friendly to him. President Trump has called him the governor of the 51st state and suggested that perhaps the United States ought to annex Canada. You know, we would be greeted as liberators, but we don't even have to, because Poilievre is fantastic. I don't know if you've watched any tape of Poilievre. He is absolutely steady, steadfast, ideologically coherent, excellent on everything from foreign policy to domestic policy, a true classically conservative leader. Probably even more right-wing than Stephen Harper was. Stephen Harper was the Prime Minister of Canada about a decade ago. You're seeing a whole new spate of conservative right-wing leaders across the world because of the reaction to the left.
And so you see some respect there towards Pierre Poilievre in stark contrast to Justin Trudeau. And, you know, you might kind of expect a American conservative like Ben Shapiro to like a fellow conservative in Pierre Poilievre. I want to show you this clip, which is interesting because it is the Daily Show, the same Daily Show that had Mark Carney on to sort of, you know, prop him up, lick his boots right before he's announcing that he might become Prime Minister of Canada. Just a few days earlier, before Jon Stewart was back from vacation, there was a guest host, Desi Liddick, and she kind of had a different take and a different opinion on Pierre Poilievre. So let's show that clip.
By the way, this isn't the first time he's mentioned this. He's been tweeting about making Canada the 51st state for months now. Side note, I'm impressed that he currently knows there are 50 states, but surely Canada's not going to just take this. Prime Minister Trudeau, tell him what's up.
I intend to resign as party leader, as Prime Minister.
God damn it. God damn it. Well, welcome to the United States, Canada. But no, Trudeau didn't resign just to make it easier for Trump to take over Canada. The fact is he resigned because he's very unpopular now. And if he ran again, he'd have to face this guy, Pierre Poilievre. He's the leader of the Conservative Party. And based on this interview, he's a pretty intimidating dude.
On the topic, I mean, in terms of your sort of strategy currently, you're obviously taking the populist pathway.
What does that mean?
Well, appealing to people's more emotional levels, I would guess. I mean, certainly you tap. A lot of people would say that you're simply taking a page out of the Donald Trump book.
Like which people would say that?
Well, I'm sure a great many Canadians, but.
Like who?
I don't know who, but...
Well, you're the one who asked the question, so yeah. You must know somebody.
America's not getting Canada from him. Get on your knees. You're our province now.
Admittedly, pretty funny stuff there on The Daily Show. But again, you could see how differently they treat Pierre Poilievre and not in a negative way. I want to show you a funny meme. This is my favorite meme of the week, came courtesy of Kian Bexty with the idea of America inviting Canada to be the U.S., part of the U.S. I think many Albertans can relate to this. The guy says, you know, you have this Chad looking guy with the American headband looking at a pretty girl saying, hey, you want to join the U.S.? And Alberta goes, sure. And then you have Ottawa step in and say, she's not interested. Oh, that's good. Gotta love the memes. Okay, I want to go on to this video. I love this video. Okay, earlier in the week, I was talking about the horrendous forest fires in Los Angeles and the incredible bravery that we have been seeing from firefighters. Just some incredible clips of planes and helicopters doing really incredible maneuvers there to try to put out those horrendous flames and the fires. I described a video of a Canadian bomber filling up water from the Pacific Ocean, and I didn't have the clip at the time, so I wanted to play you the clip, but I'm not just going to play you the clip. I'm going to play you this other clip of a guy watching it that went viral. This guy, I just love this guy. It's like, it's not even an act. It's so real. Him reacting with just so much like masculine excitement for the bravery of these men who are maneuvering this plane in an unbelievable way. I hope we blurred out all the bad language. There's a little bit of bad language. Just a warning. I think we've got it all covered up, but I'm going to play this clip because I just love it so much. Here is this clip.
Look at this American badass right here, son. That is an American badass. Look at the Pacific, how rough it is. He don't give a son. He's like coming down in there. I got it, Captain. Watch, he's gonna skim it right across the Pacific, son, and load that belly full of water. That right there is an American badass, son. Whoa, baby. Look at the concentration. Look at the focus, son. He's got a belly full, Captain, and he's fixing to lift her back up, baby. Holy smoke, son. That is an American badass. And here comes another one. Balls of steel, son. Balls of steel. Look at him. He's like, I don't give a shit. We got a fire to put out. Whoa, son. Thousands of gallons of water. And he just lifts off and flies off into the damn sunset. And here comes another one. Holy shit, baby. Look at him, son. That is some badasses, baby.
You have to love the enthusiasm and appreciate that energy. Like, yes, this is truly, truly amazing. Just one minor point there, sir. And that is that those are not indeed American badasses. They are Canadian badasses. So Community Notes did its thing on X there. Readers added some context here. The water bombers are Canadian CL 415s provided by Quebec and Ontario. The crews are also Canadian. And so despite the enthusiasm and the excitement there, just a little fact check, Colin Rugg, who's a journalist on X, tweeted this. He said, who has the heart to tell him that it's a Canadian badass? So the replies were really funny. That was one. Another one said, hey, sorry, not an American. Those are Canadians, actually French Canadians. So here is another post just pointing out the crew of these planes. They're all from Quebec. The pilots are Pascal Decloux, Sébastien Marquis, Christian Paquette, and Eric Bergeron. So really, hats off. The skill required to do those kind of maneuvers. Like you said, the Pacific Ocean is incredibly choppy, right? To go down, pick up the water, and then lift off again, over and over and over again. These people are incredible at their jobs. God bless these men, for putting themselves in harm's way like that to help protect other people. Okay, final segment of the show here. I want to talk a little bit about Canada's first Prime Minister, Sir John A. Macdonald. It was his birthday last week. And, one of the most painful things that we've seen happen over the last 5 or 6 years under Justin Trudeau is the complete effort by the woke mob to erase our history and to denigrate our entire past, to say that celebrating our country's first prime minister is beyond the pale, to see the statues get toppled, the streets renamed, the schools renamed, take John A.'s name off of everything. It is an absolute disgrace, the effort by the extreme left, the cult of the left, the far left woke mob, to erase our history. It's been despicable. And what I noticed this year on Sir John A.'s birthday is that there are now efforts to combat that there's more and more people willing to speak up and voice their support for a person like John A. Macdonald, our appreciation for him, the fact that we would not be a country, we would not be here, we would likely be Americans if it weren't for Sir John A. Macdonald. And it's really a great point that is worth making. So we had Pierre Poilievre making this point. He said, today we honor Sir John A. Macdonald, Canada's first Prime Minister, on his birthday, a nation builder. He brought Canada together through Confederation and the Canadian Pacific Railway, laying the foundation for a strong and prosperous country. Without his vision, Canada would not exist today. Happy birthday, Sir John A. Likewise, there's this great video circulating on social media, a heritage moment. I used to love these growing up. Remember watching these heritage moments while you were watching TV as a kid. Well, they're back, and here is one celebrating Sir John A. So let's play that clip.
Careful, that champagne cost a fortune.
Mr. MacDonald, do you plan to bribe the entire delegation?
Our methods may differ, Mr. Brown, but our objective is the same.
My objective, sir, is honest talk.
And mine is to win.
Gentlemen, enough. We must convince the Maritimes or there will be no confederation.
Aye, George. Today, civil war grips America. How long before they look to our borders again?
Separated, the colonies are isolated and weak.
But united. Just imagine. To the east, the Atlantic provinces, then Upper and Lower Canada, across the prairies to the Rockies and beyond. A new country made one by a railway from sea to sea. Gentlemen, the time for union is now. I ask you to take the dare.
The Charlottetown Conference set Confederation in motion. On July 1st, 1867, Sir John A. Macdonald became Canada's first Prime Minister.
So 2 things of note there. Well, many things of note, even just the fact that people were circulating that and that was put out by the government. Interesting that they sort of say right out, the whole purpose of Canada was to stop the Americans, was to make sure that they didn't get annexed. The Americans were fighting a civil war at the time, and the Canadians were afraid that if they didn't unite, the British didn't unite as its own entity in North America, they would get consumed and absorbed into America. So the very purpose of our country was doing, what Justin Trudeau is still trying to do today, which is keep Canada together and keep the Americans out, essentially. And that was the purpose. And the second thing was what it was that united the country was a huge, ambitious, natural resource basically plan to build a railway so that you could get resources to and from the West Coast, so that you could connect the country via rail. The criticism that many people in Western Canada have of Sir John A. Macdonald was that Canada was created sort of as an economic colony, like the West was really just brought in to service Ontario and central Canada. But remarkable still, just that they were able to build such an audacious project. You imagine trying to build something like that today, and it would just get blocked by any number of these sort of radical left-wing Gerald Butts designed policies meant to make it so that you can't develop natural resources anymore. Canada's ground to a halt. Thinking about the vision of Sir John A. Back then, I think he would be disappointed to see Canada at the point where the provinces are fighting. No one can agree. We can't create one solid, we can't come together to show, unity towards the United States because we can't agree. You have one province that has been severely mistreated for a decade, but much, much longer, because it's really been since the first Trudeau was in office. And finally saying, what? We're just not going to do it. We're not going to allow you to sacrifice us again, because we're sick of it. You've been doing it for far too long. And again, I know I pointed this out on almost every show this week, but if you just look at a map of the pipelines, and you just see how central Canada gets its oil. It gets its oil from a pipeline that goes through the United States. So the whole idea of putting extra tariffs on oil going into the United States, it doesn't make any sense, because it would be Ontario and Quebec that would pay the severe price, especially on an embargo. An embargo on the U.S. oil going into the U.S. would also essentially be an embargo on oil coming into Ontario. So how do you explain that? Like, what are you thinking? Have you thought through how disastrous this would be to actually implement a policy like that? I really don't think that they have. And, to the point that Althea Raj was making in that clip that I played earlier from At Issue Power and Politics, it's just about being on the same page for negotiating and saying nothing is off the table. I don't really see that being as helpful. That's playing into Justin Trudeau's strategy that says, I will unleash any kind of economic warfare against you if you do this to us. I don't think Trump's going to respond to that. I think Trump would call him on his bluff and be like, yeah, buddy, go ahead. You want to cut off oil to Canada? Good luck with that, because you're going to cut off oil to your own population centers in Toronto, Ottawa, and Montreal. Like, what are you thinking? It's so brutal. But to take it back to Sir John A., I think that he had a vision for this country that is worth reflecting on, worth remembering, and worth teaching to the next generation. And that's why I'm super proud of True North and our journalist Lindsay Shepherd, who has written a book on this topic about Sir John A. It's called A Day with Sir John A., and it's a kid's book, a delightful child story about a young boy who gets transported through time to get to spend a day with Canada's first prime minister. It is really, really fun, beautiful illustrations there as well. Lindsay did a great job. I love the book. I've got 4 little kids. Some of them are a bit too young for it, but my 5-year-old, nearly 6, absolutely loves it. And I think it's just so important to teach children positive stories about our past, positive lessons, because especially if your kids are in public school in Canada, but heck, even if they're in a private school, the woke ideology has gotten everywhere. It has absorbed us, and they will be hearing the other story, the other side of the story at school. And so, you have to combat that at home. And I think Lindsay's book does a great job of teaching young Canadians, young children, that, hey, our prime minister, he might, history might not be remembering him too kindly right now, but he actually did tremendous things for our country. And indeed, our country wouldn't be here without him. And in, the face of this entire thing, this threat from Trump, this threat from the United States about being absorbed and annexed into the United States, my husband Kaz tweeted about this, and he made a great point. He said, who argued best for a Canada independent from the United States? Sir John A. Macdonald. Maybe this government should have spoken up when his statues were being torn down. Maybe our history and heritage of freedom is something we should hold proudly. And that is 100% correct, that if it's rich to hear from this government, the same government that has been telling us for years that Canada's genocidal, like literally genocidal, trying to erase our past, trying to change our symbols, trying to even changing the words of our national anthem, telling us that there's kind of something wrong with being Canadian. And now all of a sudden, out of nowhere, it's all flipped around and they're rah, 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 Canada, we need to be independent. Well, you guys haven't been making a very good case for that over the last decade. You really haven't. And it's hard to take it from you today. Okay, so we salute and honor Sir John A., and I hope people continue to teach the positive messages from his heroic role in helping create this country. We would not be here without Sir John A. All right, folks, I'm going to wrap it up and leave it at that. Thank you so much for tuning in. It's been great. This is our first full week back on the Candice Malcolm Show. It's wonderful to be back, wonderful to be with you. Looking forward to catching up on Monday, all the news on the show. Thank you. Have a wonderful weekend, and God bless.